Welcome to the Grange, everyone. This is my daughter Megan and I'm Margaret Phillips.
Bonjour, bonjour à tous. Start? Oui, ok. Bonjour et bienvenue en cette journée de pluie, mais très belle quand même. En écoutant les histoires d'aujourd'hui, imaginez la rivière Gatineau telle qu'elle était avant 1927, avant qu'elle ne soit inondée par 3 barrages hydroélectriques. Au printemps, c'était un torrent sauvage de rapides et de cascades à au moins 23 endroits d'ici à Maniwaki. D'ici à Cantley, pendant les étés secs, Lola Foley, qui habitait ici sur le chemin, la belle Grange rouge que vous voyez, une agricultrice, se souvient avoir traversé la rivière pour se rendre à l'église de Chelsea, sautant de pierre en pierre, imaginez. Ce n'était pas du tout la même apparence qu'aujourd'hui.
As we listen to stories today, imagine the Gatineau River as it was before 1927, before it was flooded by 3 hydro dams. In spring, it was a wild, fast-flowing torrent of rapids and waterfalls in at least 23 places from here to Maniwaki. From here in Cantley during dry summers, the lady who used to live on the farm, Mrs. Foley, would tell stories of when she was a child. In the summer, the river would dry up enough for her to jump from stone to stone to get to church in Chelsea so they could go right across. The river did not look the same then as it does now.
Pendant des milliers d'années, la rivière était beaucoup plus étroite et plus sauvage. Les terres des 2 rives appartenaient au peuple algonquin du désert de la rivière, ancêtre du peuple algonquin Anishinaabe d'aujourd'hui.
For thousands of years, the river was much narrower and wilder. The lands on either shore were the territory of the river desert Algonquins, ancestors of today's Anishinaabe Algonquin people.
Lorsque les colons britanniques et européens sont arrivés ici il y a 200 ans, ils se sont appropriés la terre. Ils l'ont utilisée et l'ont revendiquée comme la leur. Ces terres, y compris les rives de la rivière à Cantley, n'ont jamais été cédées par le peuple algonquin. Aujourd'hui, ça demeure un territoire non cédé du peuple algonquin Anishinaabe.
When our British and European ancestors arrived here around 200 years ago, they took the land, they used it, and claimed it as their own. This land, including Cantley River shores, was never surrendered by the Algonquin people. Today it remains unceded Anishinaabe Algonquin territory.
Nous reconnaissons et nous remercions le peuple algonquin de protéger la rivière Gatineau et son environnement depuis des temps immémoriaux. Ils ont beaucoup à nous apprendre et nous avons beaucoup à apprendre pour le bien-être de notre planète et pour les générations futures qui en hériteront.
We thank the Algonquin people for protecting the Gatineau River and its surrounding environment since time immemorial. They have a lot to teach us, and we have a lot to learn for the well-being of our planet and for future generations.
C'est pourquoi nous sommes honorés d'accueillir Gilbert W. Whiteduck ici aujourd'hui. Il vous dira que son peuple avait la responsabilité d'être gardien et gardien de la rivière. Il respecte et honore la rivière, sachant qu'elle fournit de la nourriture et de l'eau et qu'elle est essentielle à la vie même.
This is why we are honored to welcome Gilbert W. Whiteduck here today. He will tell you that his people were gifted with the responsibility of being caretakers and guardians of the river. They respect and honor the river, knowing that it provides food and water and is essential to life itself. Gilbert W. Whiteduck is former chief of Kitigan Zibi, and currently he's president of the Gatineau Valley Historical Society. He's highly regarded as a trailblazer for Indigenous social justice and education. His degrees in education and social work led to his career as teacher, guidance counselor, school principal, director of education, senior education advisor with the First Nations Education Council, and president of the First Nations Confederacy of Cultural Education Centers. He is now serving as the program and service team lead and counselor of the Wanaki Treatment Center. I believe he's also studying Aboriginal law at Ottawa U. Recently, Gilbert W. Whiteduck became lead advocate for granting the Gatineau River legal personhood status to encourage stronger environmental protection. Stories are the best way to create a connection and deep understanding, so I'm really looking forward to this afternoon in spite of the weather.
Donc, Gilbert W. Whiteduck, ancien chef de Kitigan Zibi et actuellement président de la société historique de la vallée de la Gatineau. C'est dur, j'essaie de traduire un acronyme pendant que je lis. C'est pas évident. Il est hautement considéré comme un pionnier de la justice sociale et de l'éducation des peuples autochtones. Ses diplômes en éducation et en travail social l'ont mené à sa carrière d'enseignant, de conseiller en orientation, de directeur d'école, directeur d'éducation, de conseiller principal en éducation auprès du Conseil en éducation des Premières Nations et président de la Confédération des centres d'éducation culturelle des Premières Nations. Il est maintenant chef de l'équipe des programmes et services et conseiller au centre de traitement Wanake. On croit qu'il étudie aussi également le droit autochtone à l'Université d'Ottawa. Récemment, il est devenu le principal défenseur de l'octroi du statut de personne juridique à la rivière Gatineau afin d'encourager une meilleure protection de l'environnement. Donc, c'est pas dans les notes, mais merci pour cette initiative, M. Whiteduck. Merci beaucoup.
Welcome. We're honored that you're here.
Gilbert Whiteduck and Shikas Kitigan Zibi Jiba Pindigig. Welcome to all of you for taking time out on a Sunday afternoon to listen to a little bit from me, but I think what's more important, I would like to hear from you and how and what you feel about the Gatineau River within the context of what we're facing today. And in the end, what is it that we can do together, collectively? You know, how can you become, and maybe you already are, allies to the Anishinaabe, Algonquins, and others for the protection of the river, and therefore we can talk about the rights of the river. But before we begin, I think it's appropriate for me, and I think it's appropriate for all of us, I would like to light a smudge. And if you're not familiar with a smudge, I have sage. And the lighting of the sage it's really a cleansing. And it depends how you're looking at it. And it's a cleansing to push away the negative things that might be trying to invade our thoughts and our feelings, that negative part of it. And we're pushing it away. And that's why it's so important for us. We often do it. I mean, it doesn't mean we do it every hour of the day. We do it when it's appropriate and how it's appropriate. And I think today it is, even though I'm sure there's much positive thinking in the room. And on the table here, I always bring with me what are our 4 sacred medicines. And for us, of course, there is the sage, very important. There's, you can call it tobacco, but it's really called sema. You know, tobacco for me is what you smoke, what kills you, and sema is what you use in ceremony. And we also have sweetgrass, very important, another medicine, and we have cedar. For us, we always use those 4 medicines in all of our ceremonies. And each one have a purpose in what they're giving us. And it is said that the sema, the tobacco, if you want to call it that, was the first medicine given to us by the Creator. The first medicine. And that's why whenever we're doing an offering, or if we would have had the opportunity to go down to the river, we'll take sema and in our prayers to think about it and put it into the water also as an offering, as we would to the fire. I also carry with me an eagle claw. An eagle claw has lots of significance, and it's not an eagle that was shot. We would never shoot an eagle. What happened, it was an eagle that was caught in a trapper's trap and died from it, and we will always keep all of the feathers and the claw themselves, as they represent many things, because for us the eagle is the bird for us that flies the highest and closest to the Creator, and therefore brings our prayers to Kije Manitou, the Great Spirit or the Great Mystery. I also always carry with me, of course, a belt. It's a belt that's really it represents many things, and one of those is that for us the 4 races of people. Sometimes we think of 6, but four races of people, four directions, and the four elements of the earth, and all of that. And it is said in our teachings, that we would travel on this land, and we have this in wampum belts. The Algonquin Nation carry 3 wampum belts that are at least 500 years old. And these wampum belts depict the fact that in time, we don't know exactly when, there were prophets that came to the Anishinaabe to come and share with us what was to come. And each prophet brought a teaching which would allow us to develop a governance or a way of doing things. And we are now what's called in the time of the seventh fire. And it is said it's going to be a time where things are not going well on the earth, where Jojo Aki, Mother Earth, is falling apart, and there's all kinds of things that are happening. And one of the reasons for that is that man, is at a stage where it's got to make a choice between, will it continue with all the technology and all of the development, or will it take the route of brotherhood and kindness and love, and that so that we can all come together. And I would put to you that even within Canada, Canada as a country, for my part, still has not come together to allow Indigenous people to be fully there. And I've always maintained that Canada, for me, is not a true country until Indigenous people are going to be fully part of it, and we're not. You're here. And very often, it's not about confrontation. People hear about the negative things. It's about allies. Because the land, we all have a responsibility. The land is not owned by any one of us. We're all caretakers. You may own a lot. Maybe you're going to sell it. But to even have that concept that you will own something goes against everything. You're the stewards of the land, the caretakers, as the Anishinaabe were for this land. But it was taken from us. We're still not allowed really to have access to it because it's private property, and even crown land we can't. And I better stop it right now because I'm going to go. So I will light this here. One of the things that we've done since a little while is that we've drafted a declaration. It's not a petition. It's really a declaration of how we view the river, and we call upon people, those that are interested, to sign that declaration as a way of personal engagement in talking about it, in working to protect it to the best way that we can. To raising issues about it. I believe it's the declaration is near the coffee, and there also you're able to scan and do it online. So if you're interested, we'd ask you really to sign it. I did want to talk a little bit about the Gatineau River and what I've come to learn about it and for it historically. And for me, growing up in the community, my grandparents lived by the river. And it may not be a big thing for you, but it was for us. And the reason that they built there is because they were canoeing. And my grandfather and his father and whatnot decided, as they were being pushed off the land, because we were being pushed out of the places like Cantley and Masham and other places that we had been, and we were being pushed to a reserve, an Indian reserve, and if we stayed anywhere else, we would be arrested or whatever else would happen. So my grandparents and great-grandparents built a house there, and I also remember going there as a young child and going to visit, and they used to go and get the water from the river, drinking water and whatnot, and how challenging that was. And I'm not so sure I would drink from the river. It may be clean down here, but I'm not so sure I would drink from there today. Certainly they would have to be checked a lot better. Another thing about the Gatineau River historically, obviously it was one of many rivers on Algonquin territory. Because we can go all the way down more west to Des Moines, the Coulanges, La Rouge, the Wabous, La Lièvre, all those rivers is where Algonquin people were. And if you've read the book, in particular Champlain's Dream, in many of his journals he speaks about the different nations that were there. And as he's paddling up the river, up the Kitchissippi or the Ottawa River, he notes in his book, I guess one of his guides tell him, there is a nation that lives up there. He doesn't come up the Gatineau River, but he does kind of confirm that there is a nation that lives up there. I should note also that the word Algonquin, if you've ever heard of it, comes from Champlain. It's not the word, we would be Anishinaabe, the people that were put here by the Creator. But that word Algonquin came from Champlain, who misunderstood or heard it from another nation. And if you ever read, and I often share that, if you read his journals, you'll hear that he's using Algoumiquin, that later on becomes Algonquin, or Algonquin, is used by the different people, easier to write, easier to understand by the invading missionaries and Indian agents and whatnot. But along the river, I have been told along the way by older people, much more who have now deceased, that one of the things that existed in different places, and we weren't always told exactly where it was, keeping in mind that the river is over 350 kilometers long. One of the important things along the river were caches. And caches were often built of stones from the edge of the river, and it looked like a cement. It was a circular about this high. And in there, they would leave their dried meat and food that could be used. And it was to be shared with everyone. I wasn't keeping it for me. I wasn't building that for me. Whichever family may be coming down and stopping for the night before they would go for the portage, especially at the portage area, obviously they'd have to stop. There would be food if they needed it. And there are still some of those caches. I've seen a few. I've understood a little bit how they were built. My curiosity was really big, because in the beginning we weren't sure, were they caches or were there sickly people and therefore they were holding a ceremony. But they were very small, and again, my curiosity got me to go and stand in one of those just to get a feel. Could a human being be there and what purpose? But quickly it was a cache, and it was very often not that far. You could literally see the Gatineau River from there, and therefore people would know exactly, because they would have mapped out the territory and whatnot. Another one that we learned, of course, along the way, which comes way before our time, is that as Algonquin and Anishinaabe people were at times fighting with the Iroquois people, the Mohawks in particular, and they were pushing us back, and whether we sided with the French or the British, and sometimes in order to avoid going through Montreal, where most of the Mohawks were at that time, we would come up the Gatineau River and really go by the backwoods to reach Three Rivers. Three Rivers was a huge gathering place for us as Algonquins. It was a way of escaping having to fight and whatnot. A lot of those things have been, we have bits and pieces of that have been passed on. I mentioned earlier that we our nation holds 3 wampum belts, and if you don't know what a wampum belt is, it's made out of a seashell that comes from the Atlantic coast. So we have migrated. Our story tells us of the Great Migration from the East Coast moving into the territory. I spoke earlier about the different prophets that came warning us, and therefore we moved into the territory. Those wampum belts are sacred to us. They tell us also of what is to come and what we need to do. And certainly it talks directly or indirectly about taking care of, Zibi, the river, taking care of the water. And that's why, all the teachings also tell us that water is sacred. And what does that mean is that water speaks to us. Colonization and Christianity very often has taken that away from us, making us believe that is not the case. But it does speak to us, and it keeps us alive. It's a source of life and whatnot. But in a lot of ways, we know there are dams on the river. Right now, we know that Hydro-Quebec is looking at hopping those dams improving them or whatever to create more hydro, as we well know. They like to sell hydro to the US and make money and all of that. And so all of that is going to happen very often whether we want it or not. You know, the economic side of it cannot be just tossed aside. So it's always to try to find balance between the needs of society and the needs and respect of the river. And how do you do that? And that was the concept of looking at moving towards personhood. And I'm still searching for an Anishinaabe word for it, because personhood doesn't capture the essence of the river, let alone nature that is around it. Personhood and the respect, the rights of nature. Much has been written about the rights of nature. There have been declarations at the UN in regards to that from other countries. Canada would claim that it's doing a lot to protect it, but not so sure about that. I'm not an expert. Yenny and others who work at the international level certainly educate and inform us about that, including the Sierra Club and others and whatnot. When I spoke about thinking about, because I was often told about many of our community members, even when we're looking into the 40s, the 30s, the 50s and whatnot, because they didn't have the means traveling the river by canoe. And very often the canoe was a birch bark canoe that they took from a tree, from the land, in the respect, and there was always ceremonial and connection to that canoe and the building of that canoe, and therefore respect of the water. I do want to say that in regards to water also, which is our lifeblood in a way, that the individuals who do ceremony around water, only women are allowed to do ceremony around water. Men cannot. The reason being is that women carry in their stomach the child in water and whatnot. So whenever there's ceremony, it'll always be a woman who will do that ceremony, which is often tied to ceremonies of the moon, but ceremonies of water. And that's showing respect to the water and what it means, and thanking the Creator. Most of us don't do that, right? I mean, we drink a glass of water, maybe we bought a plastic bottle of water, because that's what we've gotten used to. And it's how do we change that? How do we change our mentality? How do we change our vocabulary around it? How do we ensure young people in the schools also, they're talking about the environment, but really begin to change. And it's around vocabulary and the use of the words and how we view these things and what we're prepared to do. Like I said in the film, and just to repeat that, I've often thought about that, that we know we don't live forever. And I continue to hope, and I always say 25 or 50, whatever number of years, way down the line, and we're all gone, that those that are living in that generation, when they're looking back, as we look back at our stories and our relationships and whatnot, that these people, these young people and others will be able to look back and say in 2023, 2024, whatever it may be, you know what, there are groups of people all over, maybe around the Gatineau, maybe it's all over Canada and elsewhere, who got together. They rallied together with Indigenous people and understood what it meant, what the rights of the water, the river, what were the rights of nature, and understood that and worked accordingly. And knew that development was necessary, but that development had to be done with good planning, good thinking, and always a little bit like asking your brother, is it okay? Or asking your mom, is it okay for me to do that? Is it okay to do it that way? And not just do it because it fills the pockets. We get rich, we have big pensions, we come and live in Cantley maybe. We come and live in Chelsea or whatnot. But much more than that, much more deeper and so important. And I know, having met a lot of people don't give a damn about that.
Our Gatineau, the river of our youth, how your water waltzes by while teaching us the truth. You teach about things fancy, teach about things plain, Show how hard-edged diamonds get smoothed by gentle rain, how time seems to unravel down your water flowing craftily, what it's like to travel where the ice age used to be, how we find ourselves in history, how and why we came and go, how tales become a mystery from lower town past low, when storms come round in circles, lightning stabs your heart. Oh, how you wait so still there, your face a work of art. Your thunder and your pain, the downs to come what mays, means nothing, means everything. Your pretty points and bays, time and a river is an age-old metaphor. It's how we feel the blending of our history and our lore. We love to live inside you, to know your tricky ways. We feel your past within us and taste the good old days. Days when you were the river that was churning underneath, the one you're calmly hiding now, the one with claws and teeth. But as you are then and now, while flaunting your sweet ways, you bring the answer at this minute that these are the good old days. Right now we feel the marriage of the memories of the past to the pleasures of the present, the shapes of shadows cast. Today we are beside you, how quietly we gaze, celebrate your answer that these are the good old days. Yes, these are the good old days.
Je voulais vous remercier pour tout ce que vous avez dit. J'ai été vraiment touchée par ce que vous venez de raconter aussi, donc c'est difficile. Il y a beaucoup en tant que blanche, avec des racines coloniales, il y a beaucoup de honte aussi, parce que moi, j'apprends juste depuis récemment toute cette partie de l'histoire-là qui a été négligée, puis c'est tellement difficile de savoir qu'on a vécu toute sa vie complètement dans l'ignorance de toute une partie importante de notre culture, de notre pays, de notre histoire. Donc, mais moi, j'ai grandi sur la rivière aussi, et j'ai vu les choses. Et aujourd'hui, je me dis, ben, la santé de la rivière dépend des riverains, vraiment. Un peu comme l'hiver. Dans le fond, c'est des propriétaires individuels qui sont comme responsables de leur petit lopin. Et je trouve que ça rend la rivière vulnérable parce qu'on n'a pas tous les mêmes intérêts, les mêmes valeurs, la même appréciation, reconnaissance. Donc, je trouve que l'avenir de la rivière dépend à la fois des propriétaires privés et des élus. Et là, en tout respect pour les élus qui sont dans la pièce, mais on est élus pour 4 ans et c'est donc difficile d'avoir une vision plus longue que ça. Donc, souvent, c'est des décisions à court terme. Donc, quand je vous ai entendu à la radio l'autre jour parler du projet là, de personnes morales, je me disais, ça y est, ça m'a vraiment donné espoir et un sentiment on peut vraiment faire quelque chose pour que la rivière soit protégée malgré les personnes qui s'installent, malgré les élus. Elle est là, on la reconnaît, on va la protéger et pour de nombreuses années parce que c'est quand même un statut légal très important. Donc, merci beaucoup.
Bonjour tout le monde. Je voulais aussi remercier Gilbert W de nous accompagner, de nous offrir ces enseignements-là aujourd'hui parce que je pense que c'est quelque chose qui manque beaucoup dans notre communauté, c'est justement d'avoir ce changement de mentalité-là pour nous amener un changement de paradigme parce qu'on est encore dans un mode de fonctionnement très colonial où on privatise et on parlait justement de l'accès à la rivière. Je pense que ça a fait en sorte qu'on est très déconnecté de nos milieux naturels. La relation qu'on devrait avoir avec nos milieux naturels et la rivière, souvent elle manque. Même si on l'aime, la rivière, même si on n'habite pas à côté, on l'aime, mais c'est rien comme la parcourir, se laisser emporter par elle, la toucher, puis s'y baigner ou naviguer. La relation n'est pas la même, donc ça c'est quelque chose qui manque énormément. Et c'est des relations qui sont à rétablir justement pour pouvoir la respecter davantage et avoir l'envie, pas juste de l'utiliser pour des loisirs, mais d'en prendre soin. Parce que sans elle, on ne peut pas prendre soin de nous non plus. Ça fait partie de notre territoire, ça fait partie de qui on est. Alors merci de le rappeler, parce que c'est primordial. Donc je crois que, comme ça a été mentionné aussi, on peut être limité peut-être au niveau des protections quand justement cette conscience-là n'est pas présente. Mais à l'aide justement d'un statut juridique, ça va permettre cette reconnaissance-là, de pousser la reconnaissance, de la valoriser davantage et permettre de la voir peut-être autrement, puis peut-être d'y accéder autrement, et puis d'en prendre part, de vivre avec elle, pas juste de l'utiliser pour certains loisirs, même si c'est bien de le faire aussi. Donc, merci de nous accompagner dans cette démarche-là.
C'est que personne ne devrait avoir honte. Jamais. Non. Parce qu'il faut se dire, écoute, il y a toutes sortes de raisons du passé qui ont apporté certaines personnes de ne pas avoir des liens ou des connaissances. C'est pas là qui est important. C'est qu'est-ce qu'on fait dans ce moment ici, le lien qu'on fait présentement. C'est ça qui est important. Parce que c'est un peu, autrement, on vit dans le passé. On apprend du passé, on ne vit pas dans le passé. On apprend pour aller de l'avant. Qu'est-ce qu'on a appris? Qu'est-ce qu'on peut changer? Et puis quand vous parlez justement, un bon point, des politiciens, les mandats de 4 ans qu'ils ont et tout ça, mais ça étant dit aussi, pour moi, une municipalité, oui, il y a des lois québécoises, des normes qui sont en place, et puis parfois une municipalité peut dire, bien nous, on suit les normes. On les respecte. Mais si une municipalité se dit, écoute, les normes devraient être changées, améliorées, bien, j'ose espérer qu'ils vont adopter une résolution au moins pour envoyer à Québec pour dire, on n'est pas d'accord. Ça ne veut pas dire que ça va changer, mais ils vont se positionner et non pas seulement dire, on suit les normes. On va accepter le projet. C'est ça, moi, qui me dérange. Faites-le.
Oui.
This was just such an emotional and important afternoon. Sorry. I was thinking that maybe the weather seems windy and a bit rainy, but if anyone who'd like to could go to the river after this. But before that, going backwards, there's some tables about Cantley 1889. And I'm going backwards again. I'd like to thank the Grange and my sister, and also GVHS for helping us with this day. And Gilbert, I don't even know how to say thank you to you. It's really hit me. My family, my parents bought this property in 1954 from the farmer because Hydro-Quebec expropriated their land in order to build the hydro towers. They even expropriated a part of his farm so they could board the workers to build the dam. I mean, they were exploited. And then when it was all done, they said to the farmer, Mr. Foley, right? Okay, you have first refusal to buy back your land. And so Mr. Foley didn't know what to do. He just knew that this part of his property was rocky and not good for his cows because they trip and fall down. Farmers, I think, had a little bit terrified of the river because there were accidents in the winter. They went and cut blocks of ice, and there were all these stories and legends about accidents. In any case, my father and mother came along just at that moment. They were looking everywhere for wilderness sort of property, and so they said, "We'll buy it," and they didn't even see it. They just saw wilderness, and they sort of had cut their way through, and they built a little cottage on the rock, and they wanted to keep it like this. And I know Brianna's family did the same about a year afterwards. Anyhow, we love this place, and my parents were very worried about development in the past year. by the Foley Farm. And so they decided that they would donate it to the municipality. And that's now Bart Marion Hooks. And we're very happy that now there is an access. There's a stairway. There used to be one. Volunteers did all the work at the beginning. And they built the stairway. And now there's a new stairway so people can have access to the river there. It's not big, but it's a very beautiful, beautiful little spot. It's in a cove. You can very much meditate there, and it's very historic as well. So that's why I wanted to start at the park today so that we could visit there and do a walk of the river. And our whole family loves to share the river and our property, and that's what my sister has turned the Grange into. Queen people. My family's all here, children, and I know that they love this place. So anyhow, that's me. But I just want to say thank you, thank you, thank you. We don't have the cheese, but I do have a little gift I'll give you afterwards. So if everybody would like to walk down to the river,
I just want to say that, you know, the biggest, I think, acknowledgement is just getting invited for me. Just being, and having people listen, and the sharing that I heard this afternoon. That I can leave as I'm driving home, I'll be thinking about the different aspects that people brought. And that brings something to me, greater learning, something inside to nurture some of the things that I've been reflecting on. So thank you for the invitation. Thank you for reaching out. You know,
thank you. You brought a lot to us, I know. Speak for everyone.